It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good afternoon, all. Craig, I'd like to start with you this week and talk a little bit about how polarizing our country is at this stage. Both of you have noted this for the last several years, but we've reached a level of intensity in this friction that actually some people are starting to talk about a civil war. What's your thoughts?
So I don't personally believe we've reached that moment in time. I do think that there is rising opposition to what President Trump and members of his administration are trying to do, and I think people are finding. And remember, the majority of Americans don't approve of what Trump is doing on almost all fronts. Actually, the majority do not approve. So it's a minority of people who have embraced some of the policies, but even as they're subjected to the results of some of these policies, they don't find their prices going down. They don't find their health care costs going down. They're increasingly frustrated. So I don't think we have the makings of some kind of a military, conflict. What is troubling is the extent to which President Trump seems to imagine problems like, ICE officers being at risk in Chicago and wanting to send National Guard troops to defend them, when in fact, if there were really a massive conflict with ICE troops, I suspect the media would be covering it. And what the media is telling us, it's not happening. So much of this conflict seems to be in Trump's mind. The reality, however, is he can act upon those impulses and cause people to do things. But I think what's going on, I don't have proof of it, is constant conversation among states' attorneys general, among governors, on a bipartisan basis, to talk about, how to prevent the administration from doing those things which they think are, I guess, first and foremost unnecessary, but also illegal. That's the kind of, I think, engagement that is actually beneficial. And I don't think we have a public uprising or people are going to take arms against citizenry. Hopefully, it doesn't come to more violent conflict within these urban areas where armed troops are being sent.
Al, what's your take?
Well, I surely hope we're not headed for a civil war, but the divisions in the country are very deep. I just looked at the New York Times Siena poll, which is one of the best polls done, I think it may be at the end of September, beginning of October. And polarization and division was the second most important issue at 13% compared to the economy at 16%. Inflation was down to 5%, interestingly enough. But when you add the next two things, which were Trump and the Republicans and the state of democracy and corruption, to the division numbers, you're up to about a third of the electorate. And that's pretty alarming. Look, I think what we're getting from the president is basically a president thinks he benefits from division. He has made no pretense to be a president of all the people. He says every day the people who disagree with him are bad people. We have a daily provocation for division from the president. In the use of the Guard troops, a really good example. In a couple of ways, basically he's using the pretext of protecting ICE agents. I mean, the whole way he's used ICE is incredible to begin with. Before March of this year, ICE agents never used masks. And the kind of sort of just I don't know if you call them violent, brutal raids that he's doing that are just, they're provocative raids. You can enforce the law without those feelings. Interesting in that poll, it said that a majority of people, actually small, favored the deportation of illegal immigrants. But by almost two-thirds, they were against the tactics that Trump was using. You have National Guards, basically soldiers from one state going in to another state against the governor's wishes. Now, it's not unusual for Guard troops to go to another state, but that's for helping them deal with emergencies like hurricanes, or forest fires. This is pretty unprecedented. And, I heard somebody say today, uh, Trump has now achieved what Jefferson Davis never did, which is to have troops from a Confederate state occupying Lincoln's home state. But I do think, as we look ahead, it puts an extra emphasis on the elections we're having in New Jersey and Virginia this year, and again on the congressional elections, as we've talked about so many times. But we're a month away from these elections in Virginia and New Jersey, and they are generally a reflection, historically, they're a reflection of how people view about the administration. So, in the end, the way you stop excesses is by the voters voting the purveyors of the excesses out. And this will be the first opportunity. So as I look ahead, I think these elections are going to turn out to be very important.
Craig, I think a lot of people found the Bondi testimony in front of Congress very disconcerting. I don't think that I've ever seen such a lack of respect for lawmakers, even under those kind of circumstances. Doesn't that add fuel to this idea that we're kind of coming apart?
Well, the testimony by the U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi was something the likes of which we have never seen. I mean, there have been confrontations between the executive branch officials and Congress before, but she came into that courtroom with absolute disdain for the members of the Senate that were going to question her, certainly the Democrats that were going to question her. She came in with notes. I did watch some of it. She came in with notes next to her that appeared to almost be the talking points she wanted to use to attack individual senators, where she just turned the topic to campaign contributions that a senator was accepting from somebody that somehow was influencing his wife. It had no bearing on the question. Nobody knows what the facts are. And so, when Senator Schiff from California went through the list of the questions she refused to answer, it was sort of clear she didn't answer anything. So no one has seen a performance like that. Many people have said, I certainly agree, she was talking to one person, that was Donald Trump. She wanted to demonstrate to him that she could go there and take his case to the Congress and the American people. I don't think it worked. I think that for Trump supporters, they had to kind of wonder what was even going on. And for the rest of us, it just validated the fact that this administration is out of touch. I do think I have a prediction, though. I think she got herself in real trouble when she was asked about the White House drug czar, Tom Homan, accepting a paper bag with $50,000 in it, which he accepted, and there's no argument about that. He accepted it from undercover FBI agents in September of 2024, ahead of the election, for the purpose of getting his agreement, his best efforts to secure contracts for an alleged, a fictitious, but company from the new administration. There's no argument that it happened. It did happen. When she was asked about it, though, she said she didn't know anything about a brown paper bag with money in it. And that gave pause to the senator asking the question. He said, well, I'm pretty sure you know about the bag of money. She said, are you calling me a liar? Are you calling me a liar? He said, well, I'm sorry, but I just don't believe that. The fact is, she said it, and it stretches, any credibility that somehow the person to whom the FBI director reports, the person to whom the deputy attorney general of the United States, who looked into the matter and concluded, for whatever reason, that the Justice Department wasn't going to pursue it, that they wouldn't have given her some background on the case, let alone she wouldn't have even read the public disclosures on it. But that little statement she made is exactly what they're claiming Comey did, which is give false testimony to the Senate, to the Congress. Now, given that there's a majority of Republicans chairing that committee, I don't expect any prompt investigation. But I would have to think that that's just sitting there waiting. That's like a little ticking time bomb. And should the leadership of Congress change in 2026, I think they're going to go after her. And frankly, as well they should. She's rapidly, I think, I used to say she was moving to becoming one of the worst U.S. attorneys general in the United States history. She's pretty much secured that spot with that performance earlier this week.
It is discouraging, isn't it, Al, to see that kind of behavior?
I mean, absolute disrespect for the United States Senate, for really, it's the pattern though of just absolutely disrespect for political adversaries. I've said before that when I had, you have an argument in politics. Jack Kemp once told me, remember, we're political adversaries, we're not enemies. The Russians are our enemies. Well, for Pam Bondi and Donald Trump, anybody who opposes them is their enemy. It goes back to the first thing we're talking about today. This helps widen the gaps in the country. Now, I agree with Craig. I think she's going to pay a price for it. Craig said in the first segment that one of the ways we're going to pull the country together is hopefully is that governors in both parties will, work to sort of calm things down. Well, there's another interesting thing happened. First of all, Trump, I guess it was this morning, said that he wanted to put the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago in jail because I guess they disagreed with him. They disagreed with him about troops. But one of the things that happened this week is that both Governor Newsom of California, who Trump wants to take California guardsmen or National Guardsmen and put them in Oregon, and Governor Pritzker in Illinois have threatened to pull out of the National Governors Association if they don't take a bipartisan stand against this kind of misuse of the National Guard. And, Craig and I have been around a long time, and I'm sure his experience is the same as mine. The National Governors Conference has always been sort of a unifying, calming place because governors, put the interest of the country above the partisanship. Where they both groups have campaign committees, Republican and Democratic governors associations that do campaign money, but the NGA has been usually pretty much above partisanship. And if that breaks down because Republican governors won't break with Trump on these things, I think that could be a very damaging thing. I'll just say one more thing about Pam Bondi and the way she behaved. I remember, I think it was in 2016 when Bill Clinton walked on the tarmac in Phoenix. His plane was there at the same time Loretta Lynch, the Attorney General, was there, and he walked over to say hello, and it was a big scandal. Think about how different it is now when you have the President of the United States wanting to put his political adversaries in jail and the Attorney General just acting in defiance and disrespect of the U.S. Senate.
Well, we have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thanks so much indeed. We will see you next week.